Hello there, Christoph here. I'd like to provide an overview of this page about human-readable payments. This is intended as a page for the design guide. On this very topic, we have topics on a page on contacts and payment request formats. So the idea of human-readable addresses is mentioned once or twice in there. It has been a topic of discussion multiple times over the last few years. And now with this new proposal, there's more to talk about. So this, I think it makes sense as a separate page. But trying to provide an overview here, what this actually means, what the implications are, some technical implementations, and some UX recommendations. This document is in, I don't know, a decent draft state, I guess. So any feedback is appreciated. So the header here makes it clear, computer readable 011 versus human readable. Pretty straightforward. And so here the introduction is that Bitcoin addresses are super hard to read, remember, memorize, so they're not made for us, right, in verbal communication, speaking with each other. And that's why we would prefer something like this here, just a username @domain.com. Right? We use emails all the time. We tell them to each other, we write them down. That works pretty well. But in the end, Bitcoin transactions will always rely on these technical strings here. So what a human-readable address basically means that there needs to be something that turns this into this Bitcoin address, right? There has to be either the wallet gives me an address or some service provides me with an address. It has to be turned into an address for the actual payment to be made. That means there's something here in the middle, and there can be different things here in the middle. And that provides different security and privacy implications. Because those intermediaries can potentially swap out addresses and receive payments for you, and you might never know about it. Or they can track your information. So I just want to emphasize this again. It is for human readable. That is the primary use case. For technically readable from computers, this works great. You can put them in a link, you can click them around, you can share them with a button in chat messages. Like exchanging this electronically is solved. But exchanging it between people in a human context, that is not really resolved. And so I think it makes sense for solutions to focus on that specifically and not try to turn this also into an address we then use in APIs or programs and other ways. But really solve for the human readable part. So structurally, these addresses usually consist of a local and a global part. So there's a username and usually a domain. If let's say you have a social media account, you might say, I am so-and-so on service name, right? So you also have a local and a global part. Very common thing. Even physical addresses have a few more hierarchical parts. There's a country, state, city, street, house number. But similar idea, in this global system, you break things down into smaller pieces to identify them an individual. Specifically for this conversation here for Bitcoin addresses, these three ones were the ones that were proposed out of the recent conversations around Matt Corallo's proposal. I'm taking it out of this proposal here and discussing it separately as a general format question, because the first one is also used by Lightning address, and the second part is also used by the Universal Money Address, the UMA. So it kind of works across the various proposals. So then I go into the pros and cons of each one. The email one, it's familiar, easy to say, understand, read, write. It's established, technical compatibility, it's on keyboards, easy to type, but it just creates a lot of confusion. Then we have this kind of intermediate one. Let me start with the last one here. This is where the @ is replaced with the Bitcoin symbol. So that's of course hard to type. This is not on any keyboards today. But it is very uniquely and distinctly Bitcoin. I can trust that this is a Bitcoin address and nothing else. So that is the really strong benefit. But for input, users will need some type of input assistance. And then we have the center one that tries to kind of find a space in between, still tries to create something that is uniquely to Bitcoin. But then let's say if you type in wallet just the email part, then it could still try to append this at the beginning and try to see if it can resolve it. You don't have this Bitcoin symbol in the center where your typing is kind of like you're in the middle of typing, you need to figure this out, and then you need to continue typing. I'm not a huge fan, as you can probably tell, but that is a consideration. And then whichever one you find, you personally find the best, depends on how you look at things. So if you want something that works today, that has technical compatibility, you might prefer the email format. It's just about compatibility, familiarity. Right now, that's basically it. Right? That's what both of these first two approaches are. Then, like I said, if you just want something that's uniquely Bitcoin, and just avoids any type of confusion, like someone saying, you give someone a payment address, you give them your Bitcoin address, it looks like an email, then they ask like, hold on, isn't that an email, but don't I have this other email? How do I, it just gets a bit confusing, and people might even, if technically there's a somewhat lower risk of losing funds, they might still be worried about it. There's a psychological element there too. And if you also think that, the Bitcoin symbol will find its way into keyboards as adoption increases, this is a today problem, but not a future problem. And you might also look at the most useful payment formats for this system, which are bolt 12 addresses and silent payment addresses, because they're static, they're reusable. Those are not really rolled out yet either. So you could say, well, I'm looking at this as a future thing, and that's why we go for this forward-looking solution that is maybe not best, that is not that perfect for today. And then if you prefer the more flexible one, a little bit of a compromise one, then you prefer this one with the Bitcoin symbol at the beginning. Now it still needs input assist in wallets, same as the one with the Bitcoin symbol in the center. Just some thoughts. I feel like it's kind of clear what my personal preference is coming through, or my rationale at least, but make sure to create your own perspective here. Then moving on, we have some design patterns here. So we need to educate users. Here, there's kind of this intro screen here that it creates a visualization of people speaking with each other. One person intentionally has a phone, the other person doesn't. So it needs to be verbal exchange, because that's what this is made for. If both people had phones in their hands, they could just, send the address to each other or bump their phones or whatnot. So this is trying to visually and verbally drive home that this is about in-person exchange. And it also talks about, frames this as a public address, right? Which also creates, instantly makes the user aware that, there are privacy implications and considerations here. So I think the framing of this feature is important. Then once users can set them up, I'm still looking at the DNS-based approach here. So there are some scenarios. Either the user has their own domain that they want to use, in which case the wallet simply provides the payment information, and then the user needs to go into their own, what's it called, domain registrar, and set up this text entry. And then there's a confirmation period here. That's this flow here at the bottom. If the wallet provides this service for them, so the user can just choose a username and then they get a payment address at this wallet service, then it's slightly different. They just need to be this availability check. And then there's also this screen here called Keep These in Mind, where it says, good idea in green and bad idea in red. That says good idea, share this address in person. Good idea, choose an address provider you can trust. Bad idea, post your address publicly online. So just a simple way to remind people about how to think about this thing. Yeah, and then if there are some other scenarios here, like one wallet might provide silent payments, another one might offer both 12 addresses. The user wants to combine the two to set them up. Wallets should resolve payment information, and then let's say they find a Lightning invoice in there for some reason, or an on-chain address that really should not be reused. They can inform the user appropriately about these things, especially when it comes to them setting up their own. They might not have control over someone else's address. Then the sharing aspect, because this is meant to be shared in person, there's no copy button here, like on this little contact card, no copy button next to the Bitcoin address, but there is a share payment info, so that would share the actual payment information, not the human-readable address. Then entering, this here just shows a solution for the Bitcoin native address format. I'm just going to call it that way, where to make up for not having a Bitcoin symbol on the keyboard, the user can just type space and it tells them here, like, enter space to type Bitcoin symbol. Makes it, I tried this out in CodePen, did a quick test, it's actually pretty smooth. Of course, this input assist is necessary to be able to type this. That is not a problem with the general email format, and in the format that starts with a Bitcoin symbol, it's also not really necessary. You could statically place the Bitcoin symbol at the beginning. However, that also means it might be confusing with amount input fields, and people might get the impression that they cannot put in any other address formats. Anyways, then we have the technical approaches. Those are kind of at the bottom here, because this page is trying to be more just a general introduction and then draw more attention to the UX side of things. The technical proposals they're already well outlined, right? But this talks a little bit about the differences, how the DNS-based proposal, how that works. You can either have your own domain registrar and then set it up, or there might be some type of Bitcoin address service, could be a wallet provider, could be something else in the middle, and then you have these two middlemen entities to consider. Then it talks about how the information is resolved. So you have your address, gets turned into this text entry, record name, and then it gets looked up and gets turned into actual payment information, this BIP21. So that's kind of it. Here's another explanation real quick. It resolves it, and then the wallet directly deals with the Bitcoin network or the Lightning node, right? That's different in the Lightning address system. So here you resolve the human-readable address in a slightly different way, and then the wallet basically always talks to a server. And there's this constant communication back and forth. So it's a lot more powerful, right? There can be dynamic requests, dynamic responses, can be withdrawals, all kinds of things. But it is more complex infrastructure. There's more stuff in between, and it's for Lightning only. So just different. Paynims is mentioned here because that was that and BIP47 have been around for a really long time, but has never really become popular. And I think Paynim specifically is problematic because of the centralization. Along with Lightning address, I guess Nostr address could find a mention here. And I'm not sure, maybe there are other ones. There could probably be another section at the bottom, talk a bit more about detailed security or privacy implications and risks. But I don't think the meat of this is really about the different formats and the visualizations of how this could play out in applications visually and interactively. And then with the idea to hopefully help resolve, the big debate, like which of these formats should we go for? Because if we lock them in, that's probably what we're going to be stuck with. So we have to make a good decision. Anyways, this page is, like I said, everything's open for moving around, changing feedback. You can add sections, remove them, change everything. Your feedback is highly appreciated.